And what's up, everybody? It's Monday, Master Motivation. My name is Jason Flame, and today I'm joined by a great friend, a mentor, one of my instructors, Conrad Ercolono. Conrad Ercolono is a martial artist, a martial arts master, a teacher, an author, and a father. Mr. Ercolono's martial arts teaching career began in 1986, and he founded what is now Respect Martial Arts in 1992. Conrad achieved his master's rank in 1996. He wrote an Amazon bestseller, A Black Belt on Parenting. Inspired by his teaching, he founded the National Martial Arts Scholarship Foundation in 2020, a nonprofit organization dedicated to making martial arts training accessible to at risk youth. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to be here.
It's
Yeah.
awesome. This is exciting because guys. For those of you watching now, watching live, or maybe you watch later, you've seen some of the shows, and I've met amazing people in the martial arts industry, as well as throughout my community. And it's rare that I get a chance to really bring on the people that are closest to me and people that had a tremendous impact. Master Colano was one of the very first instructors that took a chance on me and hired me to teach at his school back at the Spectrum Club in I believe it was 1993. And one of my best friends who we competed together on Team ASE for many many years. So a lot of history. I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit and tell you a little bit about his start in martial arts.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. I know we were talking a little bit earlier, and I said there's so many stories we could share. I mean, endless stories. But I thought it'd be interesting to go, through my martial arts career, actually, how I started and how I got to where I'm at today. You were mentioning, uh, you know, entrepreneurship and, not just being a martial arts school owner, but being a business owner or being anyone that's looking for motivation, growth. And I actually started martial arts at 18 years old, and like a true entrepreneur, I was looking for a place to study martial arts where uh, I didn't have the money to pay for lessons, so I was actually looking for a place that would possibly do some kind of a trade. And I scoured the valley. I went around different schools in the valley, and I was looking for someone that might need, like, I don't know, work around the building, or work around electronics because I had an electronics background, or maybe some computer stuff. But I didn't find anyone in the valley that was willing to do that except for great Grandmaster Ichikawa, Tarzan of Karate, as you well know. He said, "Yeah, we'd be willing to take you in here to clean the school for lessons." And I had never, 18-year-old guy and living on my own. Cleaning was not really on my to-do list, and so he actually had to teach me how to clean the school, clean the toilets, clean the mirrors. Like I didn't know any of it, but I did that for 4 years, training from zero to black belt. And then we had a policy of, black belts, if you were teaching, you weren't paying. So I was able to continue it from there. And I don't know if you remember, along the way, about 6 months into my training, I was in the school and I was working out, and we had this glass window in the office, and Master Pat Johnson walks in, and everybody stand up, and the martial arts master walks in, we all stand up, we all bow, and Pat Johnson was the stunt choreographer for the original Karate Kid movie, and he walked into the school, and everybody stand up, bow, and then he's in the office talking to Grandmaster Ichikawa, and they're pointing at me, and I'm on the mat stretching, and they're pointing at me, and I'm immediately think I've done something wrong. What have I done? I'm in trouble, right? And then they're like, this, like, come to the office. I'm like, oh man, am I stretching wrong? Am I kicking wrong? What's going on? And they said, hey, listen, Master Johnson was saying, hey, look, we're looking for someone to be a stunt stand-in for Ralph Macchio. They have to be his height, his build, and 18. And I was like 6 months in. I was like, what could I say? Sure, of course. And they literally, I didn't go to class that night. Master Johnson's like, hey, let's get in my car. We drove down the block over in Woodland Hills. They were filming in the elementary school. There's Ralph Macchio. I go on set. They put me back to back to him. We're about the same height. At the time, I think I was more buff than he was. He's like thin as a rail. And he, so we, they were like, you're hired, and you got the job. And I did 3 weeks on set with as a stunt choreographer, or as a stunt stand-in for Ralph Macchio, on set, and that was like a three week whirlwind experience. I got to meet all the Cobra Kais, I hang out with them, We did training together. We did all this stuff. It was a remarkable, uh, precursor for me to having a martial arts career because at the time I was just doing martial arts. I was a computer guy, electronics guy. I wasn't thinking as martial arts as a career, but
Hmm.
having that experience, I think it emboldened me to to step out a little bit more on my comfort zone and to become a teacher and a leader and things like that. And the the thing about martial arts um, teaching is you have to be kind of an outgoing person, outgoing personality. And at the time, I was super shy and wallflower. And like I said, that little point tipped me over. I think to getting to the point where I ran my own program at Red Belt. I got called in to teach at the Spectrum Club in Agora Hills, and as an actual employee for the company, doing martial arts, teaching martial arts there. And then that eventually they closed that program down, and I offered to buy out the space. I actually offered to lease the space from them, and that's what started the Wayne Institute of Martial Arts, which ultimately led to Respect Martial Arts. Like it was not a planned trajectory for me. It was every time I had an opportunity, and well, look, you and I competed together, so you know that I'm capable of stepping up when an experience presents itself to me, and I think that's a key component in being an entrepreneur. Like if something comes along and you have even an inkling that you can do it, you do it, despite how nervous or
Hmm.
unworthy you feel. You just step into it, and
Right.
that's what I did. I did that every step of the way. I got an opportunity to teach. I taught. I taught. I remember the first time standing on the mat, karate mat, teaching as a blue belt at Tarzana Karate, and I didn't know what to say, what to do, where to look, how to do anything, and just progressively got better and improved over time.
Right.
And,
Learning a lot by making mistakes and
oh
probably doing the
yeah,
wrong things. Let me stop you real quick on this that part of the story, and just go back because people that are watching, especially with the huge interest of Cobra Kai and everything about the Karate Kid. I mean, what an amazing experience for you. To be on set and to train with the guys. What a lot of people don't know is that the people actually did train. I mean, Pat Johnson
oh yeah,
taught them Tong Sudo. And
yeah,
and so what were those training sessions like? Because that was still very early in your martial arts career. You're only what you said 6 months into it, and now
yeah.
you're training
It
with
was
Pat Johnson, who was Mr. Chikawa's instructor.
right, and I'm training with a bunch of guys that had about some had a little bit of martial arts experience, some more, but I think there's a personality amongst actors where these were all professional actors. I mean, they'd done jobs before, so they could embrace quickly like the choreography and the movement. And I was just learning martial arts, and these guys were we would train for an hour and a half or 2 hours every day. That's we get on set, and if they weren't being called for some shooting, that we had a class set every day, as I mentioned. And it was a hard workout. It was basic, just basic core karate, tang sudo, just you know, do that stuff. But like I said, I was inspired because I was surrounded by a bunch of guys that were taking it extremely seriously, and they
Hmm.
took a class, and it was yes sir, and it was bowing, and it was the whole 9 yards. It wasn't like a typical Hollywood scene. I think the culture of the whole film was everybody on set was taking it super seriously, and at the same time having a good time. There was like a good feeling of camaraderie. I felt very welcome, even though it was you know no zero movie experience or anything like that, zero martial arts experience.
Hmm. And do you think that Pat Johnson set that tone and created that culture on set? Was that due to his strong personality?
Yeah, I had met him once before. I think he came into the school one time, and subsequently years later after that, like got to see him many times and know that he's a consummate professional martial artist. But at the time, I was super intimidated by him, and
I'm
it
still
was,
intimidated.
but he wasn't. It was how can I describe his demeanor? He was super serious, but I was never afraid. I was just intimidated. But I felt like he was like dad. It was like tough dad. Like I'm gonna have a hard martial arts experience, but I know I'm being taken care of, and despite my lack of experience, I know I'm going to be taught and elevated, and all the good things that we expect from an instructor. We expect our instructors ourselves to be able to do, you know, for other people. He
Hmm.
did all of that.
Yeah. And you brought up the story about how the way that you were able to pay for martial arts was cleaning the school or trading. And I think a lot of us, especially in our organization at least, there were a lot of us that kind of fell into that. That was something that Mr. Chikawa was known for. If someone wanted to train, he would find a way to help you
Oh,
train and
yeah,
help you pay for it. And I think all of us have taken that on ourselves, and we all have students in our school where maybe they can't afford it, but they can contribute in a different way. I mean, we just have this love and passion for what we teach. So if there's a way we can help someone learn, what we wanted to learn. So you clean in the schools, and then you talked about, teaching. I remember you teaching at the rec center. You were a red belt.
right,
I think a
exactly.
third gup red belt when I first started my martial arts training at the Thousand Oaks Recreation Center. And
Yep,
so, you were still kind of, an inexperienced martial arts compared to what you are now, obviously, and
right.
an inexperienced instructor. And I can definitely remember a different personality change in you over many, many years. We
Oh,
grow in our personality, being on the mat and embracing that leadership role. Talk a little bit more about how you embrace that leadership role and continue to teach, and
oh.
then opening the school.
Well, the red belt experience. So seeing as I wasn't a black belt yet, I got again, I wasn't thrown into it. I was offered an opportunity to take over the park program as a red belt, and in our system in martial arts, a black belt is called Mister So and So, and I was Conrad at the time, and I asked Grandmaster Chikano. I said, how should I handle this? He said, well, first of all, have him call you by your last name, like a black belt. Just act like a black belt. And I said, great, got that. So I went there and I said, I'm Mr. Ercolono. This is what I'm doing. And then I didn't have a leadership persona. I had no reference point for what leadership is like. So I simply copied all the mannerisms and speech patterns of Grandmaster Cop. I was just him,
Hmm.
and I did that until I was able to use that platform to develop my own personality, my own way of doing things, which, as you said, it's like evolved over the years. So, but like I would think my one success tip is, I'm not a big fan of fake it till you make it. I don't think that's quite the right way of phrasing, but model success until you can model it yourself.
Hmm.
That's what I did, and that's
Right.
that's how I was able to platform off of that. The whole teaching thing for me, what made a big change in my teaching style is actually the lead story in my book, the Black Belt and Parenting book, because I had a very bad experience as like a third degree black belt teaching, and I had a choice with that experience. What could I do with it? As I did with many different opportunities when I was, as we know, teaching, to turn something that was potentially a bad experience into a learning experience.
Hmm.
Like I have so many stories of my failures, but since I'm still here and I'm still teaching and I've grown from the experience, I don't view any of them as failures.
Hmm.
They were learning experiences. I didn't see them that way at the time, but I was able to work my way through them and get to the point where here we are. Respect martial arts, super
Right.
successful, mega successful.
Hey guys, if you're watching right now, if you're watching live and you have any questions, please just shoot us a comment real quick, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. And if you're watching, please let us know that you're there. I see that there are several viewers at this time, so just drop a quick comment and say hi. But can you share with us that story, that bad experience when you were a third degree
Yeah,
black belt?
yeah. I was teaching a class at the Spectrum Club, as you well know, and I had learned not in Tong Sudo, but I learned this drill, that like if you make a fist loose and you wrap the back of the hand, like it hurts, but
Hmm.
if you pack a tight fit, you wrap it doesn't hurt.
Hmm.
And I had this group of kids that I was teaching, and there was this one particular kid. He was 10 years old, um, and good kid, and again, looking back, really good kid, but just his personality, his communication style was, he was very outspoken, he was a little surly, he had a lot of what I would call quote unquote negative traits. And we lined up, and all the kids were punching loose, and I said, wait, look, we're going to hold our hands out, I'm going to go down the row, I'm going to wrap your hands. And so I go down the row and I wrap this kid's hand. I go, make sure you pack him tight. Well, I went to go wrap his hand, and he pulled his hand out of the way, like
Hmm.
snatched it out of the way, and I missed it. And then he laughed, and then the entire room burst out laughing. And between you and me, Jason, my ego stepped in, and I said, let's try that again. And I grabbed his hand and I wrapped the back of his hand, and then he dropped to the ground in tears because I manhandled him. I manhandled the situation. I let
Hmm.
my ego overtake me, and at the time, actually, you know what? I was a master at the time. I was a fourth degree black belt, and I'll tell you why. I know that because that whole thing happened, and like immediately, I apologized. We bowed out of the class. I apologized to the mom. They quit that day,
Wow.
right? Like the one-two punch of any instructor. I lost it, and then I lost the opportunity to make it right, and I lost the student. But I was wearing my master's. I had my master's belt, and I actually wore it inside out for the next 2 weeks and I went into total contemplation mode. And I'm the kind of person, when things don't go right, I go to reading or studying. I try to figure out what went wrong, and I couldn't figure. It took me a few weeks to figure it out. And actually, uh, the reason I wrote a book on parenting is because I couldn't find a book that really helped me. There was no martial arts book that talks about losing your cool with a karate kid, a karate student. There's no instruction manual on that. I went to school books like teaching how to teach classroom curriculum, in school, nothing there. And finally, I was sitting at Barnes and Noble, and I was looking at the parenting section of it, and this is way before I had my daughter. I thought, why not? And I went over there and I started reading them. Reading those books really gave me the insight to understand that I wasn't teaching children like a parent. I was teaching children like a military leader, and someone who was expecting them to respond like adults. And I read a great book called Helicopters. Highly recommend Helicopters, Drill Sergeants, and Consultants. And it's a book by a gentleman named Jim Fay. And in that book, he talked about one key point that I recognized it, which is that we don't have to we don't have to get angry or upset to discipline, to have our boundaries with students. And once I recognized that I was the one that was letting this 10-year-old kid control my emotions and control my feelings, at that point it altered the trajectory of my teaching, and that was it. That was like the big unlock for me. And I agree. I think my personality is different, and I think what I experience now is I understand children better. I understand the joy of teaching better. I understand that they have their evolution in understanding how what I expect from them. I've gotten way better at communicating expectations to children, and
Hmm.
knowing that that it's they don't get it. They're kids. They have to learn how
Right.
to get it first before
Right.
before you can start laying on the heavy handedness of responsibility and a black belt responsibility and things like that.
And this incident, just from the timeline, this is long before you had a child,
Oh yeah,
right? So
yeah,
so to the and I'm willing to bet that when Raven came into your world, everything changed because for me, we were kind of taught in a way that was somewhat militaristic.
yeah,
Um, and it was just kind of that's just the way it was,
right,
and there really wasn't any. I don't remember, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but there wasn't a lot of psychology that was taught to us. It was this is a kick, and this is a punch, and this is a
right,
form, and this is how you do it, and if you don't do it this way, it's wrong. And there's so much to it, and this is the '80s. Parenting was different in the '80s than it is now, right? I mean, so much has evolved and so much has changed. I think that we're all so much better, instructors now, just based on not only our experience, but the willingness to go and share experiences with other instructors, and instructors sharing their experience with us.
right.
But becoming a parent changes how we teach in so many ways. I was such a jackass. I was such a jerk as a teacher. I'm
I was,
totally honest. And then my daughter comes into my world, and I'm like this marshmallow. I have people that tell me I went from a total hard ass to the biggest softy ever, and then you find that balance in between, and it's just kind of great to hear people talk about it because we've all had that moment on the mat. We lose our cool. It's happened more than once. I mean, we used to do cup checks in class. That was a
yeah,
standard
to
thing.
kids. Oh, I know. Yes,
A cup check was everybody stand in a side stance, you get kicked in the groin, and if you're
right,
not wearing a cup, and like how dumb was that? But it was
yeah.
because we just copied what we. saw,
Right.
and we just continued to do
Absolutely.
it. That's the way it's always been done. So we just kind of went with that for a long, long time. Jackie Jackie's watching. She
Oh,
said
Jackie.
facts,
Fact.
facts about me. I'm sure.
Well,
But
I have to say something. As you mentioned, I picked you as a couple of black belts to bring on to the original Spectrum Club program, the Wayne Institute of Martial Arts. And there's a reason why I picked you. There were a lot of other black belts that were available to teach, but I don't see you. I get the hard ass part, and I get the that part, but I never saw that. I saw you as being a passionate, enthusiastic martial artist, and that's the kind of people that I'd like to be surrounded by. And especially back then, we didn't have as many good systems in place. There wasn't really like teaching classes, instructor meetings, things like that. So it
mhm,
was, I knew that I needed someone who could wing it, that would wing it in a way that would reflect my values and passion for the art. And that was why I picked you. So I think that the methodology of what we did might have been hard ass, but I don't think you as a person, you just did what you were taught. So cup check was what we did. So cup check is what you did.
right,
Push-ups is what you did. So push-ups
mhm,
is what you taught, right? But I
right.
don't think I think I believe that the reason that your school grew and prospered even before you had your daughter was because people knew that you were there for the right reason.
Mm.
Even
Well,
the
thank you for recognizing that, because I have to remind myself, and I also have to remind my students. I just kind of have to ask them sometimes. Do you know why I teach the way I teach, or why I say what I say? And I even had a student this past Saturday at a Krav Maga test that I had to give him some tough love that day.
oh
But
yeah,
immediately after, and when he got his belt, I was forehead to forehead with this kid, and I said,
right.
I just want you to know that the reason that 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 this took place today was because I care about you, and because I don't want to see you get injured, injure someone else, or be labeled as someone that has an attitude, because he was talking back that day. But anyway, yeah, it's
See,
eh,
that's a 10-year-old that I had. I know. And you have to see the person behind the personality.
right.
And one of my favorite books, I'm a voracious reader, and I always have been. And there's a book called The Defiant Child. And if you read this book, it was all of these strong personalities end up becoming the most successful people in adult life. And when I see a kid that talks back now, I just look at someone who's quite willing to stand in face to face with a martial arts master and talk back. That's a strong person. And I
Mm,
totally respect that. And it's okay. I'm not going to feed into it. I mean, if we're in a school setting or class setting, you have to raise your hand, or we have to
mhm,
follow some of the curriculum. But I get it. Like that person, that's a black belt. And you get it, right? That's a black belt in the making,
mhm,
right there.
mhm. Yeah, and I even have to remind my own kids now, who are 20 and 17. When I have to discipline you, or I have to teach you a lesson, which they constantly remind me that that's all I'm ever doing is teaching lessons. But and I say that I'm disappointed. It's not that I'm disappointed in them. I'm disappointed in the behavior, and that's a very difficult thing on the mat sometimes. For instructors to be able to separate the behavior versus the child, and we correct the behavior and we help the child grow.
Every parent here, every parent that's listening to this, and every parent that uh, has to keep the children have to know that they love them, that you love them unconditionally. So the love is unconditional, but the discipline might be conditional because they need parameters. That children love discipline, and children need discipline, and they need that foundation that discipline provides, and it's just structure. And if they have that, they grow and they prosper and they have good self-esteem. They have all the attributes that we want from our children or black belts or whatever, and it all starts there. But you can't make them feel like they're you hit the nail on the head. You can't make them feel like they're unloved just because you're telling them they have to go to the room or whatever it is.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's come back to opening your school. We talked a little bit offline about the difference between how you ran your school in the beginning, as more of a passion project, and kind of what's we get into martial arts, and we really all opened our martial arts school because we love martial arts. Most of us, many of us, didn't have the business education. We thought if we teach a good class and people like us, they'll keep coming back, which for the most part can be true, but
Yeah.
there's a lot more to it. So just talk about the transition. And one more time, guys, if you're watching, I know there's a couple of people watching out there that haven't commented yet. Just drop me a comment, say hello. If you have questions, please feel free to ask questions. But let's talk about that transition from a passion project to a full-time business.
Yeah. So, like I said, that there was like happenstance that got me into owning a martial arts school. I was assertive enough and insightful enough to say when the Spectrum Club organization closed their martial arts program to say, hey, can I lease this space from you? So I had that little bit of business savvy, I guess, as it were. But I completely agree with you. I ran it as a personality-driven business, and as something that if I'm magically somehow people are going to get it, and if they if I do it enough, they'll just come to the program and train, and you know thousands of students. But as I mentioned, I read a book called E Myth, and if you've read the book, it's real eye opening. And for any entrepreneur, again, another book I highly recommend, as it described the process of going from a hobby to a business owner. And in that evolution, one of the things is systems, and systems can be everything from how we teach our classes, how we run the school, and then as you mentioned, earlier, I rebranded my school, uh, and that was partially due to the offerings of Brandon Belisa, who was very very passionate about, hey, you got to change the name of your school, but it was a brilliant move because what it really did was it gave the school focus, and we understood our purpose and why, and by doing that, I'm able to now run the business from the purpose and from why we're doing it. And I could ask you, like, what business do you think we're in? Like, I think your Krav Maga program has its purpose and why, but your karate program for kids specifically, like, what do you think we really do? I mean, I have my answers. I'm just curious, like, what do you think? Like,
Well, my goal, and one of the reasons that we changed the name of our school to more part karate and Krav Maga. Well, obviously we teach karate and Krav Maga, but I when I first named my school Tong Soo Do University, there's a long story to go with that. It had a lot to do with Brian Nan and his idea for running a school, and that I was going to be the head instructor, and I just kind of took it and ran with it because Tong Soo Do was what we taught, and university was a prestigious school, so I thought that was great. When we rebranded and brought Krav Maga into the fold, I wanted to include Moore Park in the name. I initially was going to just name it Moore Park Karate, like everybody
right?
else did.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and so to answer your question, my focus in my school is to teach the absolute most realistic self defense and martial arts that I can. And also by doing that, I have the opportunity to help students grow and learn, all the life skills, focus, discipline, respect. But
Right.
community service is huge. Community service and leadership. Those are the two biggest things that I use martial arts as a vehicle, because when our students leave us and they're no longer training in martial arts, because very few will continue to be a lifelong martial artist, they will take the lessons of leadership and community service into their life, and
Yeah.
that will serve them for many years to come. I hope that they're safe and I hope that they're strong, but those things I think that will be the long lasting results.
Safe. See, wow, that, like, safe and strong. Those two things. I mean, I think that sums up your mission, and the same thing for me.
It is our mission.
Yeah, totally, no, this safety.
Building a safer and stronger community through teaching martial arts is our mission.
You know, I posted something a while back about raising a warrior, and I've always wanted Raven. I don't want Raven to ask for an easier world. I want her to be a more powerful person in that world. And I think we're on the same page on that. I want all my students to be able to go out, and of course, self defense and self protection is what we do. It's part of it's. If you teach it incompetently, and boy, there are some incompetent martial arts schools that teach self defense that just does not make sense, straight up. But the but so teaching competent self defense, of course, but the core value of building a stronger person. I think that's where you and I both are on the same page. I want strong people. I think respect is strength, and I and I,
Mhm.
I think it takes more strength to respect people than it does to just put them down and dismiss them, and especially with our.
Say that a little louder for the people in the back, especially on social media the last week and a
I
half.
know exactly right, exactly. One of the things that I enjoy I think I enjoy about our relationship, but I think I enjoy about a lot of people that I respect. Relationships, we don't always have to agree on things. And man, it would be sort of boring world it would be if we all were on the same page all the time. But we can see each other's point of view, or at least respect each other's point of view, and that takes a stronger person. I think you and I both agree that it takes strength to walk away from a fight, and that's, you have to know that if the fight comes, you can bring it. And if you know that the fight comes, that you can bring it, that's the kind of person that can walk away confidently. It's the insecure person that starts throwing because they're afraid of what's going to happen next. So
I agree.
yeah. So the core values, and knowing that, and knowing what my business is about. If I was a donut shop, I would think I could sell donuts, but it's not really that. It's bringing people happiness. Every smiling person that comes in and eats. Well, you're right. You're multiple uh, entrepreneurs.
Everybody loves ice cream. I can tell you that.
Exactly
Everybody
right.
loves
Okay,
ice
thank you.
cream.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, I don't think your mission statement in an ice cream business is like the ingredients that you put into the ice cream. Its mission statement is the result of what's happening, and that's really what the e-myth is about. It's like, understand, what do you do, and then how do you do it better, and really take a, a sober look at that process, and make sure it's a process, and make sure it's teachable to other people so that they can continue the process, and you can branch out and franchise
Hmm.
even within your own organization.
Right. So talk about, branching out, because you did branch out and kind of do your own thing. We all kind of started in this group, and you've branched out and you have some other schools that you work with now. Um,
Yes.
just talk about how that happened.
You know, the interesting thing about martial arts is that it involves personalities, and we can't avoid it. This is who we are, and I was part of the alliance, and I was part of a larger organization prior to branching off my own. And my initial reason for branching on of my own was because I felt that there was a value difference in what I was doing and what the organization was doing. And that doesn't mean that my values are better or worse. It just means that we're different. And I felt that my needs weren't being met in that respect. And so the first time I branched out off on my own, because there was a couple times I came back to the organization, then I left the organization again. Um, again, I took a step back and I looked at what connects us to our legacy in the martial arts, our history in the martial arts. I went to Korea with Rio back in '95, and it was a great experience going back to the original Korean art that we came from. But man, when I got there, I realized it was so different than what we do. Even the process of going from Chuck Norris to Grandmaster Chicago down to us, like it had changed. The art had changed a lot, and I thought, at some point someone had to along the way make this their own, and not just pass along what was being passed, and branch off on their own, and not just follow the organization. And so that's what I chose to do. I not only branched off on my own, but I also made some major alterations to the system to fit what I consider to be a contemporary martial art. So
Hmm.
so at some point the organization became a point of, well, it's safer and it's more comfortable to stay in an organization, and branching out is super uncomfortable. And then you talk about authority. People are like, who do you report to? I report to no one. Well,
Hmm.
what happens when you want to promote? I report to no one. That's a hard question to answer until you understand that at some point someone had to be the head of an organization that did that prior to us.
Hmm.
So that was my choice. And just as a side note, I made some alterations to our system, our root system, because I think that a lot of things were handed down that were not appropriate in a contemporary setting. Like we talked about the militaristic way of teaching. Chuck Norris learned the martial arts in the military, and he's one of many martial artists that learned, and that was in a military setting. Of course, that was appropriate, but you're in a room teaching a bunch of kids. It has to change. I think we teaches civilian self defense. So it's got to be geared towards what we would incur in our society today, not necessarily in warfare, not necessarily holding a samurai sword, not necessarily all the other things that were handed down. They're great to have tradition, but it has to evolve. And that's, so the evolution is really what led me to where I'm now. Independent school, respect martial arts. It's all these pieces that added up to getting wanting to get better and wanting to do what I do better.
Hmm. One thing a good friend of mine mentions quite often, Kevin Kowalczyk, always respect tradition, but embrace innovation. And I think that that kind of describes what you have
Exactly.
done, because you're one of the most, to me, looking back, one of the ones that, I mean, man, like, you define tradition to me for so long,
Right.
um, and the organization has grown and evolved and changed, from Wong Ki to bringing Tong Shido to America, and then once Tong Shido was in America, uh, it changed even from Chuck Norris to Grandmaster Chikawa, and now from Grandmaster Chikawa to you, and then now you're changing on your own. I think, I mean, it's a natural progression. Um, that there's going to be change. I don't think that there's a school in the alliance that hasn't changed. A lot of us have maintained. I mean, we still teach all the traditional forms. We still teach mandatory kicking combination,
Right.
um, and all these different requirements that I came up the ranks with. We've kept that and kind of added to it. For us, that's where Krav Maga was an addition or a supplement to what we may have been missing. So,
Oh,
we all have our reasons for change and
right.
innovation. And so now here you are, Respect Martial Arts, Agora Hills, California.
Yep.
Um, and you talked a little bit about the book. Talk a little bit more about your black belt parenting book.
Yeah, I recognize that, we teach core values. We talked about our core values, and we have students, and this is especially, geared towards the children, that we have values and we are teaching values to the children, and it might just be a value of, like, stand up for yourself if someone's trying to bully you, just a basic core value. And what I recognize is that if we're teaching children, and we're teaching these values, and we're trying to teach these values to the children, but the parents are on a totally different page, then we're the kids going in circles, and they don't they don't know where to follow. And depending on our personality and the parents' personality, whose values they're going to pick up on, even in just in terms of the martial arts. So I wanted to create a piece that helped people to understand why I talked the way I talk to children, and what I'm actually after when I'm teaching children. And I felt that that piece would be a good piece for parents to understand. The book is about motivation and communication. And so most people don't really understand motivation. And most people don't really understand communication, especially when it comes to teaching children. And we've learned and evolved over years to better our method of teaching, talking to children. And I've studied extensively, but it was more, I could just, it's not just the regurgitation of other books that I've read. It was me standing on a mat like you have for 20 plus years teaching children, and realizing, wow, when you say something like this to a kid, it's confusing. If
Hmm.
you say something like this to a kid, it's misleading. And if you raise your voice and you get angry, it can hurt the kid's feelings, and it's not necessary. These are methods of communication and methods of motive. If I raise my voice, that's a method of motivation, and it's effective, and I can get immediate
Hmm.
results. But is it sustainable? Does it really talk to the self-esteem of the kid? That's where I kind of, needed something that would help parents to understand better. I know you do it. I've heard you talk. Like, I've heard you teach. You're very motivating to children, and there's a method to how you do it. And that's what I did. I simply wrote down. The book was hard to write because I know what I do. I know I'm good at it. I've gotten so many praises and accolades over the years for specifically how I teach children. But what do I actually do? And I had to break
Hmm.
it down and think, okay, I I use positive words. I I control the inflection and tone of my voice. I I smile. Like, we don't really do a lot of push-ups here. But when I wrote the book, we were. But it's like, okay, 10 push-ups. Smiling because, hey, we can enjoy the process. Like, these are things that I have done, I've adapted over the years, and they're effective. And why would a child keep coming out? You got to think, like, why would a child keep coming back to a disciplined environment? It's because the environment is they know the motivation behind the discipline.
Hmm.
So yeah, I wrote the book, and it's a Kindle ebook available. It's not a hard copy book. I offer it to my students here so that they understand what's going on. Of course, it's something that I'd like to see go past the school, but primarily it was a method to get the parents here to understand what we do and why we do
Yeah.
it.
No, I think that's awesome. The three words that keep coming up is you're talking about effective communication that leads to a heightened motivation, and with
Right.
enough motivation, we build discipline to do what we know we need to do. And I just think that those
Absolutely.
three things go together really well. Hey, just want to say hi to Mr. Starachi. He's just watching. I don't know if you saw that comment coming up. David Starachi's watching. My wife Jackie's still watching. EJ Master Boucant is watching. Anybody else watching? Please drop us a comment. We're going to wrap up in just a few minutes, but if you have any questions, drop those questions in there. One thing that we didn't touch on yet is that we've talked about your school and we've talked about your book and talked a little bit about your training in Tong Soo, but you're someone that I have always respected for searching out knowledge in other arts. You've trained in multiple other arts. Can you talk about some of the other arts that you've trained in and what you've learned in them to bring to your school?
That's it exactly. That's how the school evolved here. Is I would study a martial art. I studied jujitsu. I've studied Krav Maga. I've studied various forms of kung fu, aikido, hapkido. And when I say studied, like I used to read books, martial arts books. I was the consummate martial arts geek. I had bookshelves of books, and I've read books about a multitude of martial arts, but actually stood on the mat and trained in these arts. And what I found is there's sometimes arts have better ways of doing things than what I was doing. And I'll take that technique, bring it back to the school, try it out with a bunch of people, and see if it's something that we like. And then if we like it, we adapt it.
Hmm.
The part that I think that I like the most about training in multiple martial arts, you've had this experience too, is putting on a white belt and being a white belt standing on the mat. That helps you a ton in being a better teacher because you remember you learn the white belt experience.
Hmm.
And boy, there's a lot of schools out there, and there's good schools, good systems, good teachers, good systems. There's also bad schools or bad systems and bad teachers, or teachers that don't know how to communicate, or there's systems that don't really address contemporary settings, as I mentioned before. So putting on a white belt and standing there, I would like look at like someone trying to describe something to me, and I would I know you could say it better, I know you could do it better, but humbling myself to just allow myself to hear what this person has to say. That's actually the core of the book. A black belt of parenting is just parents just listen to how their children talk and listen what they're saying. They master communication, and I had to be able to rest, cool my heels and let these people teach me a different way of doing things. But then what I found is, man, there's some smart people out there, and there's some intelligent martial arts. I think Krav
Hmm.
Maga is a tremendously intelligent system. You know, I've studied with martial artists that could take a cell phone and turn it into like a weapon of mass destruction, and just all of these great artists out there. And I encourage anyone, if I were in any other field, I would, if I was an attorney, I would go hang out with other attorneys or go to another school and just learn how they do things and open your eyes. There's always room for growth, opportunity for growth.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember the very first time that I kind of branched out. The first time that I branched out of Tong Soo was learning Ketsugo Jiu-Jitsu from a good friend of mine, Chris DePalma, also my partner in our other businesses. And I remember putting on a white belt for the first class, and my students watching after class going, "Why are you wearing a white belt?"
Right.
I said, because I know nothing about this system and this art. And it feels good to start over because when you get to a certain level, um, I've been doing Tong Soo not nearly as long as you or some of my instructors, but I've been doing it for a very long time. And what kept me interested in Tong Soo was doing the other arts and doing the other things and being able to I don't know, maybe spice things up a little bit, add a throw
Yeah.
here, add an armbar there. But I remember that experience was like you talked about the white belt experience. I love that. And then when I went and did it again in Krav Maga, like being a white belt, even though I had been around Mr. Cox forever teaching Krav Maga, I never formally did it, and I never put that lower rank belt on. And it is it is humbling. And then for my students to look at me again and go, what are you doing? And I just keep coming back to I just want to keep learning.
Right.
And a good friend, Rich Grogan, who was on the show, said, be a master learner. When
Oh
you're a
yeah.
master learner, that is just an amazing concept. But then, on the business side, going to the martial arts super show for the first time, for me, getting outside of the group of school owners that I had been surrounded by for so long, which had taught me so much. But again, to some level, you kind of hit that wall, and getting out and meeting people like Brandon Beliso, Dave Kovar, Mike Metzger, Ricardo Laborio, different, and now to be able to pull different ideas and just keep things fresh and fun and exciting. I mean, there is no limit to the amount that we can learn. I mean, there's just really no limit. As long as you're looking for more, you're going to find it. It's just a matter of where are you looking.
Yeah, and and like you, I've diversified, and I've taken the things that I've learned. I founded a nonprofit organization. It's still in its infancy, but it's a scholarship fund for bringing martial arts training to at-risk youth. I also I do some real estate investing, and I also I'm actually in the process of developing a software app, and and why? Because there's new adventures out there to be learned from, to experience, and then you take all the experience that you have here in the school as a business owner, and you can apply that to any business. If you're a good business owner, you're a good business owner, and if you understand business principles, then you understand any business principles. And I think that's why you've diversified, and that's why I have as well. And it's always about that. And as far as spicing things up, I completely agree. This software app world that I'm stepping into is totally unknown territory, and I'm learning a ton, and I'm okay with it. And the investment is not necessarily in the product, but in the education, so that when I do this next one, I'll know better. And I got that. I'm paying for my college degree in software development as we speak on my first try. But who knows? Maybe it'll turn into something profitable. But I understand that it's an investment in my education as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. I'm a little shocked that you hadn't thought of that um, many years ago, because we see in our industry how many different software programs and apps and all the different
This
things
is
out there.
not a martial arts app. I was talking to
Oh,
to Tule over at my studio academy, and I hit him up for some advice, and I straight up like, this is not a I'm not an I'm looking outside the martial arts industry, closer to the real estate industry that I'm also involved
gotcha.
in. So
Cool.
yeah, but I agree. I've been a computer geek forever, so
Yep.
yeah, I'm surprised I didn't come up with software for karate.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Well, hey, we're getting near the end of the show, and one more time, just several people still watching. Last chance for any questions. The reason that I started this whole podcast was in the real early stages of COVID. There was just like so much drama and so much negativity on Facebook, and I said to myself, what can I do to add something positive or something impactful? And so I came up with this idea of just interviewing all the martial artists and friends and school owners and business owners, people that make a difference in their community, just to kind of tell their story. So, first, I appreciate you sharing with us and being candid with us and telling us some of your successes as well as your failures. But the other part of it for me was I started thinking of this more after the fact. I said, this could be a really cool thing for my kids to watch, or my grandchildren or great grandchildren to leave as a legacy, because maybe they will see not only who I was, but who I surrounded myself with. And they learn about the people that I surrounded myself with. And you're one of those people, like I said in the very beginning of the interview, that had a tremendous impact on my teaching ability, my martial arts experience. Like I said, you gave me a huge opportunity when, not many other people did. There were a couple of people in the alliance that did give me the opportunity, and without that, my school would not be what it is today. So I just, want to take a minute to tell you how much I appreciate you, and just thank you for all the lessons, all the experiences, all the fun times, some of the times that we can't talk about on this interview right now, but we can talk about later. Basai and Big Bear. Anyway, um, but listen, thank you so much. thank you so much for everything. Just appreciate you and appreciate what you're doing. I'm glad that our relationship is still intact after all of these years, and we can communicate, even if it's just online like today. So thanks for being on the show.
No, you got it. And right back at you, Jason. You inspire me all the time, and I appreciate who you are. And make me want to push my boundaries more and more every day. So I appreciate you back.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you. And guys, thanks for watching today. Everybody that commented, anybody had questions, um, check in next week. We'll have more guests every single Monday, 12 o'clock, right here on our YouTube channel, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, we're on it. Just come back and see us next week. And Conrad will do lunch again soon.
Sounds good.
All right, guys, that's it. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you real soon.